And good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I am your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this very lovely and mild Friday evening in Pittsburgh. And I hope it's all those things wherever you are in Steeler Nation, unless you like the cold. And if it's cold where you are, great. But I'm glad it's getting warmer in my neck of the woods. And before I begin tonight's show, as always, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We bring you live shows each and every day and night, including this show, the Steelers Preview with Brian, Jeff, and Dave, the Steelers Hangover with yours truly, Shannon White and Brian. The Touchdown Under show with Matty Peverall and Mark Davison. Know Your Enemy, or The Curtain Call in the offseason with Jeffrey Benedict and Michael Beck. The Scobro Show with Dave Schofield and his brother Rich. So please check all those out. And, of course, you can check all those shows out on any audio platform of your choosing after the fact. And you can. By the way, you can catch us live also on Facebook. All those live shows you can catch on YouTube. You can also catch them on Facebook. And we also have a whole family of audio-only shows that we produce, and then we download them to the internet, or upload them, I should say. And then you can download them on any audio platform of your choosing. And then we have the Live Mic, we have Let's Ride, we have the Stat Geek, we have What You're Talking About, we have the War Room, we have From the Cutting Room Floor. Those are all of our audio-only shows, so please check those out. And, of course, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown, all the free agent news, as I'm sure you know if you've been checking in this week, all the free agent happenings with Steelers. You can, of course, find anything you need Steelers related on Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. It's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And hello to everybody in the live chat. We have, who was number one? Creex was number one. And they say, good evening, Pittsburgh Steeler fan. Kathy Ford, Steeler Pittsburgh. George Teston. Dark Storm. Ivor. Brad Jewett, who says, Tony, with a bunch of Y's in there. Danny Owens Jr., Brian Brown, Ryan O'Toole. And Ryan O'Toole says lots to talk about tonight, and that's definitely true. Steeler Chick 46. Jared Devil. Sorry, I was having some computer issues before I went on the air. I was trying to figure something out, so I'm all flustered, but we'll get through it. Nate Van Dyke. Oh my gosh. Nate Van Slyke. Just me. Lots of names on here, so you have to bear with me. Billy Steelers fan forever. Evan Gulls, Brad Jewett. All right, you guys are awesome. So let's talk about those free agent happenings. As Ryan said, we do have a lot to talk about tonight. Let's get into the news on Friday, of course, because it's such big news. A double dose of it. First, we heard the news that the Browns hadn't made a trade for Deshaun Watson. Originally, Watson supposedly rejected the Browns. It was said that he wanted to play in a warm weather city. He wanted to be close to his family. But on Friday, just like that, it came over the wire that he agreed to be traded to the Browns. And the deal was consummated, and Houston gets 3 first-round picks, plus a couple other picks that I don't remember what they were. And Deshaun Watson gets a whole new contract, 5 years, $230 million, all guaranteed. So, it wasn't that long ago that he was worried about being charged criminally for all those sexual assault allegations. And now he gets a new $230 million deal and a new team in the Cleveland Browns. Of course, he still has a bunch of civil suits pending, but that's not going to put him in jail, and it's not going to end his football career, but he still could face I would say, a lengthy suspension. So it is an interesting development in Cleveland. And of course, you can kiss that Baker Mayfield, Cleveland Brown relationship goodbye. It's amazing how quickly things change in the NFL. It wasn't long ago that he was the number one pick in the 2018 NFL draft. And it looked like he was becoming a darling in Cleveland, and certainly within the ranks of the NFL, within the NFL universe, he was becoming a celebrity, doing all those progressive commercials and really becoming a national celebrity. And it looked like he was becoming a pretty decent quarterback for the Browns. Certainly, he seemed like somebody who was willing to pick up that baton and lead the downtrodden Browns franchise into a championship future. And now he's on the outs, just like that. He had a pretty bad 2021 season. He was definitely injured. He had injury issues, and so that affected the Browns season. It affected his season, and they told him that they would be looking at big-time quarterbacks this offseason. I don't know why they would tell him that. I don't even know why they would do that. But to Cleveland's credit, it worked. I mean, they have Watson now. No matter what you think of him as a person, and I can't imagine him being a universally loved figure ever again with all those accusations. They went out and they made this deal, and what does this mean for them? This means that they're under a great deal of pressure to win, and to win now. They've been everybody's offseason darlings for the past 3 or 4 springs. They're a sexy pick to win the Super Bowl every year, or at least make it there. And, the best they could do up to this point was get a wild card in 2020. They beat the Steelers at Heinz Field. You got to give them credit for that. And they gave the Chiefs a good game in the divisional round a week later. But last season, they kind of, they backslid. They took a step back, and they didn't even make the playoffs. So they're under an enormous amount of pressure to win. They have a lot of talent on that team. There's no question. They have a talented defense. They have a lot of skill position players, a really good offensive line, heck of a running game. Nick Chubb, that running game is top notch. So, Deshaun Watson could be the final piece to the puzzle. Then again, it is the Browns. They could, like Juju once said, the Browns is the Browns. And, if any organization could screw this up, it's them. And they're certainly, their resources are going to be compromised now moving forward as far as the ability to build a championship roster from this point on. So, they have to win now or they're going to have to blow the whole thing up. When you invest that much in a quarterback and you give up so many draft picks, so many number 1 draft picks in the process, if you don't win and win pretty quickly, you're going to have to blow the whole thing up. So this is a big gamble for the Browns. So let's see what happens. As far as Baker Mayfield, I know a lot of my behind the steel curtain colleagues don't agree with me, but I've always liked Baker Mayfield. And now that he's not a Brown anymore, which I don't know where he's going to land, it's going to be easier to cheer for him. So I hope he honestly, I hope he puts it all together and he shoves it in the Browns' faces. I really do. I really do. I could say that now that he's not a Browns quarterback anymore. I hope Baker Mayfield goes on and has a Pro Bowl career and really sticks it to the Browns as many times as he can. I think it'd be fitting for the Browns and like I said the other day, this is why when you have a franchise quarterback or you think you have a quarterback you can build your team around, this is why you don't go looking anywhere else, or you don't even, if you're going to do a deal like this, like they did with Deshaun Watson, you just do it. You do it like the mafia does it. You just do it without telling them. You walk him into a room and you say, Baker, we traded for Deshaun Watson. We're gonna get rid of you now. That's how you do it. You don't preempt it like they tried to do, because say they wouldn't have been able to make this deal with Watson. Well, their relationship with Mayfield was already ruined before that even happened. So it was going to be, moving forward, it was going to be one heck of a task to try to repair that relationship. So this is why you don't go bringing in heir apparents and stuff like that. Aaron Rodgers showed us why you don't do that. So many of these quarterbacks, they're expected to lead their teams. They're expected to be the most important piece to the puzzle, and you're bringing in their successors. You're courting people who could take their place. It's just not healthy. So when you have a quarterback, and I'm not saying Baker Mayfield made it to that level, because he certainly didn't, but they were counting on him to get there. And before he could even ascend to that level, they were looking elsewhere. And lucky for them, at least right now, lucky for them, they were able to get Deshaun Watson. Otherwise, it would have been even uglier than it already is between the Browns and Mayfield. So I don't know where Mayfield's going to land, but again, I hope he sticks it to the Browns. So that's one bit of major news from Friday. And then, of course, we have to talk about Juju Smith-Schuster. He's finally a next Steeler. We thought it would happen last year, but he came back on a 1-year deal after he really couldn't find the contract he was looking for, the multi-year deal. Last year there were issues with COVID and a reduced salary cap, and there really wasn't a lot of money out there. And plus, he didn't really have a great 2020. He had, I think, 97 receptions, but he wasn't a big play receiver. And there just really wasn't a market for him to have the deal that he wanted. And of course, last year he had a season-ending injury, a regular season-ending injury early on, and he came back for the playoffs. But certainly, he didn't have the kind of career, the kind of year that you could take to free agency and say, "Hey, look, this is the kind of receiver I am, and this is the kind of deal I want." And he really had to take another prove-it deal. And instead of Pittsburgh, he took it in Kansas City, where he almost signed last year, 1-year deal for $10.7 million. So, I think it's a good move for him. If he's looking to finally cash in at some point, well, I mean, if you can't do that in Kansas City's offense as not the primary receiver, if you can't find targets when you have Tyreek Hill and Kelsey, then shame on you. So, and obviously Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. So I wish him all the best. I've always been a big Juju fan. He has a lot of fans in Pittsburgh, but in a strange way, he also has a lot of detractors, and it's for stuff that when he first came into the league, it was looked at as refreshing. Look at this young receiver. He's out in the community. He's doing funny stuff on social media. His bike was stolen. People, cheered for him. They hoped he could get his bike back, and he did. And it was great. Al Villanueva taught him how to drive. I mean, he was so endearing, but as quickly as a lot of people put you up on the pedestal, that's how quickly they knock you off the pedestal. And that's kind of what happened to Juju over the past few seasons. And I think in a lot of, I think he was kind of a victim of circumstance, because you could point to 2017 and 2018 and how productive he was over those 2 years. He had 2 90-plus yard touchdown receptions, plus he had a kickoff return for a touchdown. So he showed a lot of big playability, and he was playing opposite Antonio Brown, and Antonio Brown's gonna, if you have any kind of talent as a number 2 receiver, Antonio Brown's gonna bring that out of you, because he drew so much coverage when he was here. He was the number 1 receiver in the game at that point, and he was on the greatest run in the history of the NFL for receivers. And then obviously AB and the Steelers parted ways heading into 2019, and it really wasn't the same for Juju after that. The last 3 years here, he wasn't the same kind of receiver. But I think a lot of that had to do with the Steelers and not necessarily him. The quarterback play after 2018 in Pittsburgh was not up to par. We know that. Same with the offensive line play. Same with the offensive schemes. It was just a bad 3 years for offense for the Steelers. And Juju just couldn't develop. He couldn't further develop his career as a receiver here. So I think in a lot of cases he was a victim of circumstance. And I find it hard to believe that all of a sudden he lost the ability to be a productive and big play receiver like he was over his first 2 years. So again, I wish him all the best. I think 15, 20 years earlier, he would have been Hines Ward. He would have been that guy that the fans universally embraced for his play on the field. But, you have to factor in all these other variables now, and we're all products of our environment. And he was certainly a product of social media. He grew up with social media like a lot of young players do. And rightly or wrongly, that turned a lot of fans off. And he made a lot of enemies that way, which, again, I find to be kind of dumb that you would hate a player for that kind of stuff. There's a lot of other reasons to hate or be turned off by professional athletes for their off the field actions. Being on TikTok and Twitter and all this other stuff, to me, that's not something you should really hold against an athlete, but that's just how it goes. If you're not winning a Super Bowl, then there must be reasons why. And you can point to so many reasons, and people love to point to stuff away from the field. And according to a lot of, as far as a lot of fans are concerned, if you're not focused on football 24/7, 365, then you're not committed. And that's just how a lot of people view Juju. So hopefully he can. I hate to feel too sorry for the guy. He made $8 million last year. He's going to make almost $11 million this year. So he's having a pretty good life. He's probably laughing away at the bank. But I think he showed last year after he got hurt and he made that one speech with his mom by his side how much football means to him. When he got really emotional. So it means a lot to him to play the game of football, despite what people might think of his other endeavors. He clearly loves the game of football. He plays it hard. So hopefully, who knows? Maybe he'll find his way back here someday. These things kind of happen all the time in sports, so you never know. But so it's sorry to see him go, and of course, it does a lot of damage to the Steelers' receiver room because Ray McLeod signed a 2-year, $10 million deal this week, and James Washington's all but gone. So you're left with basically Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. So the Steelers had a great week in free agency, but they also had a pretty poor week when it comes to their receiving core. It got ravaged. So that's a top priority now, I would say, heading into the draft. And for the remainder of free agency, you would have to think that, well, they're going to add to the room. It's just a matter of how are they going to do it. Are they going to bring in a veteran receiver? I'm sure they are, but is it going to be a high-profile veteran like a Jarvis Landry? He's a name that's been bandied about the last few days, and he would certainly be a great fit. Julio Jones is another one. T.Y. There's so many veteran guys out there, and of course, there's a lot of younger, unknown receivers on the free agent market. So I'm sure they're gonna add. It's just a matter of who are they going to bring in, and are they going to focus their attention on the receiving core in the draft with a premium pick or two. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned to that. But let's talk about the Steelers' activity in free agency this week. And it started on Monday with the signing, the rather quick signing they agreed to terms with Mitch Trubisky, quarterback formerly of the Bears and the Bills. And that happened during the legal tampering phase. So you couldn't say that they signed him on Monday, but they definitely agreed to terms. And I was actually shocked that it came together so fast because, he was unquestionably the number one quarterback on the free agent market heading into free agency, heading into Monday. And I assumed, there'd be a bidding war for him because you know how the NFL is with, quarterbacks, how starved so many teams are, and how everybody is trying to find that next great passer. And I figured, Giants, Steelers, Saints, you name it, there'd be like a bidding war, and he would take his time and sign a pretty lucrative deal. But no, he agreed to a really team-friendly deal with Pittsburgh. 2 years, $14 million on paper. It could be as much as $27 million with incentives. So, I mean, you have to commend the Steelers for getting this deal done, and you have to, be at least a little bit excited about this because I think there's still potential there for Trubisky to turn into something. Like right now, he looks like the bridge quarterback that people speculated, they would go out and get in free agency, whether it was Trubisky or Winston or Mariota, Andy Dalton, so many names were thrown around. So he's that proverbial bridge quarterback at minimum. He'll be 28 by the time the season starts. So, you could see this guy playing here for a couple of years and them going out and in the meantime drafting their next franchise guy and hopefully developing him into exactly that. But Trubisky is still young enough that, if they can sort of tap into that, number 2 overall talent, when he was drafted 2nd overall by the Bears in 2017, and if they can develop him further through coaching and through him just basically, growing into that role, then possibly he could be their guy for the next 4 or 5, 6 years. And wouldn't that be something? If you found I'm not saying he has to be a franchise quarterback on par with Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or you name it, Justin Herbert. But if they can find a really good starting quarterback, a guy that can help them win football games and take them to the playoffs and make them legit contenders so soon after Ben Roethlisberger retired, I mean, that would be, well, it would go against the odds. It would go against history and how things usually unfold in the NFL after you lose a guy like Roethlisberger. So if they could find that guy, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all for him stepping up and making a leap and being a really top-notch quarterback for them for, who knows how many years, like if 2 off seasons from now, if there's a panic that they might lose him, then I think, that means things are going well for the Pittsburgh Steelers and their future is going to be a pretty good one, because obviously if he proves to be that kind of quarterback, they're going to do whatever they can to sign him to that lucrative deal and pay him, what your usual high caliber starting quarterbacks make in today's NFL. So, but I think it's important that somebody steps up and seizes the moment, whether it's Trubisky right now, he's a sexy pick to do that because they just signed him and everybody's excited. I mean, a lot of fans, not everybody, but a lot of fans are excited about him, including me. But whether it's him or Dwayne Haskins, who signed his tender the other day, or even Mason Rudolph, who looks like, the odd man out right now. No matter who it is, somebody has to step up and seize the moment. The quicker that happens, the better. Because the last thing you want, if you're the Steelers or their fans, is for it to be a close competition where, because chances are, if it's a close competition, it's not going to be a great competition. It's probably going to be a pretty mediocre competition. Like we heard a couple of years ago, even though they said it was a great competition, but I have my doubts about the Chukes Okorafor and Zach Banner battle for right tackle at training camp. You don't want it to be something where, Mike Tomlin he's deciding in the final days of training camp who his starting quarterback's going to be. You want somebody to step up and seize the moment. And I really don't care who it is. I mean, they would all be great stories no matter who does it. And you don't want Tomlin answering the question week in and week out, who your next starting quarterback's going to be. You want the next guy of this current crop or somebody that they possibly draft. You want that guy to be so good that if somebody dares to suggest that you replace him, they'll look at you like you're crazy. Like, get out of here. Get out of this. Get off of Twitter. You're drunk. Go home. Get some rest. You never heard that. You rarely heard that about Big Ben. Maybe the last couple of years you heard it more, but in the prime of his career, you would never hear anybody dare say Big Ben needs to be benched for whoever the backup was. So that's how good you want the Steelers' next starting quarterback to be. Because, I mentioned in my article the other day, how things were in '84, David Woodley and Mark Malone. They acquired David Woodley that offseason in a trade. Mark Malone was a former first-round pick in 1980. And then you got Scotty Campbell, who was part of that '84 draft class. He was a third stringer. So that was your quarterback class. That was the first quarterback class after Terry Bradshaw retired. And it wasn't long before David Woodley and Mark Malone were taking turns as the starting quarterback for the Steelers. And then by '85, Scott Campbell was getting starting reps. He was starting games for them, and there were people calling for him to be the starter. And every week you wondered who was the next starting quarterback, and nobody was ever satisfied with the starter, whether it was Woodley or Mark Malone. And then years later, Bobby Brister, Neil O'Donnell. I remember '94. O'Donnell was, the Steelers they were on their way to having their best regular season since the '70s. They were going to win 12 games or 13 games that year, and he missed a couple of games at the end of the year. And Mike Tomczak, who was just a journeyman, really, he came in and won a couple of games in O'Donnell's absence. And then O'Donnell came back at the end of the year. It was against the Eagles. I'll never forget this at Three River Stadium. It was like a pretty poor offensive showing by both teams. And people were in the stands chanting, "We want Mike." It was that kind of thing for 2 decades. The head coach was always answering that question. Do you think so-and-so should start this week? What would it take to bench so-and-so and put in the backup quarterback? So that's what you don't want right away if you're Mike Tomlin or the Steelers or their fans. You don't want that kind of a situation with the Steelers quarterback room where, Mike Tomlin has to answer every week who his next starter is going to be, or he has to defend who his starter is. We kind of got a preview of that in 2019 with Mason and Duck Hodges. Back and forth, week in and week out, who should start. Especially as the season progressed and Rudolph started to struggle, and then at the end of the year when Hodges started to struggle, so we kind of got a preview of that. I don't think they want that. So right now it looks like it's going to be Trubisky's job to lose, and hopefully he doesn't just go out there and barely win the job. He seizes the moment. He meshes wonderfully with Matt Canada's offense. He's got all the mobility you would need. I would say he has elite mobility. He's not Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick or even Josh Allen, but he's a pretty darn good mobile quarterback. So that seemed to be the desire of Mike Tomlin and the Steelers this offseason. Art II even mentioned it in his end of season press conference. He wanted, they wanted a mobile quarterback. Well, Trubisky is definitely that. So hopefully he can finally mesh, or Matt Canada can finally find a quarterback that he meshes with, and they can just take off from there. So that's Trubisky. I think my favorite signing, I'm obviously excited about Trubisky. You're always excited about the quarterback, but aside from him, I'm really excited about James Daniels, the guard that they signed from another former Bear, and he's the prototypical Steelers free agent. He's young. He's going into his second contract. He has 48 starts already. He looks like he's a really solid pickup and somebody who could maybe anchor the middle of that line. They also signed Mason Cole on Monday. He has, I think, 39 starts. He's a center, but he could also play guard. They could both play center and guard. So these are two young guys. He's another one, Cole, 25 years old. Daniels is 24. So, a year ago at this time, we sat here and we wondered what was going to happen with that line. And, I mean, they were bringing in guys like B.J. Finney, and I knew it wasn't going to be an overnight thing. It was going to, when you're basically starting over, when you're overhauling your entire offensive line, to think that that's going to be fixed in a year or one off season, that's just probably illogical to think that way. So last year was kind of like, they stripped away, all the old plaster, and, they brought in guys like Trey Turner, and they tried Kendrick Green. He struggled a bit. It was kind of like they had a board, like you see on when people are doing cement work or doing sidewalk work, and they have like a board there so you can step over it so you don't fall into the hole. That's kind of like what last year was. They were stripping away all the old plaster. They got rid of Villanueva. They had to watch Matt Filer leave. They eventually had to cut David DeCastro because of injury. Marquise Pouncey retired. So that was kind of last year. And, they tried to address it with some free agents and in the draft, and they found a good one, I think, in Dan Moore. But, it's still up in the air as to whether Kendrick Green's going to be able to be a starter in this league. And he struggled a lot last year until he was finally replaced by J.C. Hassenauer at the end of the year at center. So that's what kind of last year was. This year, it's certainly not a finished product, but when you look at that unit as a whole, starting from Dan Moore and Kevin Dotson, who apparently he's still not out of the doghouse. If you listen to a lot of these insiders like Jerry Dulac, I don't know why people don't like him, but meaning the coaches. But I mean, it seems like the line's better when he's in there. So what their problem is with him, I don't know, but he's not set in stone as a left guard. But I'd say right now he's your starting left guard. Center, I would say at this point would be Mason Cole. Right guard would be Daniels, and of course Shuk Okorafor is your right tackle. And yes, he signed a huge deal for him, 3 years, I think $29 million. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, how can they do that?" But if you look at the numbers, what the big time tackles are getting in free agency, I mean, Shuk's got nothing close to that. And it kind of reminds me of Max Starks. He was, it was like 12, 13 years ago. He was their starting left tackle, but he was kind of average. He didn't really blow anybody away. He wasn't a Pro Bowler. And 2 years in a row, they placed a transition tag on him. And I think he made like $18 million total in 2 years. And people are like, why are they doing this with Max Starks? Well, starting tackles aren't easy to find, and they cost it's like an ace pitcher in baseball. I mean, those guys they cost a lot of money. I mean, if you're talking about finding a starting tackle in today's NFL, a high end one, you either have to trade for him or draft one. To try to sign one in free agency, I mean, you see what these guys are making now. You have to break the bank. It's almost quarterback money that these guys are getting. So I can see why they would, Shukes has started for them since 2020. He started some games for them prior to 2020. I think, maybe he's not the greatest right tackle in the NFL, but he's adequate. He's competent. He has his issues, but he's not horrible. So I think, he's better at pass protecting than he is at run blocking, but who knows? He's still young enough. He's 25 years old. Maybe he can still develop into something even better. But if you look at their entire unit now compared to last year, you have to at least be encouraged by what you see. Even with Kendrick Green, struggling last year, he still has a chance to take a leap. J.C. Hassenauer, he improved, in my opinion, markedly from 2020 when he came in at the end of the year and had to start at center for Pouncey when he had his issues. He showed a lot of improvement last year. LeGlue, I think, is an interesting prospect who played a lot last year at guard. Of course, I like Dan Moore a lot. And then you have Joe Haig, who's your veteran swing tackle, and he could play guard too. So the unit as a whole is much younger than it was after 2020, and I would say the potential for it to be really good is a lot better than it was last year. So, it's not a finished product. I'm not saying that these issues with the line are solved now, but compared to a year ago at this time, they're in much better shape with the offensive line. Now, the other moves, obviously, Miles Jack was a very high-profile signing on Wednesday, and it's got Steeler Nation. Excuse me, Steeler Nation is flying high after that move, and he's not a Pro Bowler either. None of these guys that they're bringing in are Pro Bowl players, but he's a dynamic inside linebacker, somebody that they want Devin Bush to be. He's 100+ a year tackler. He's not, I guess, not the greatest in coverage, but he can cover. And essentially, that's what Devin Bush should aspire to be. So to have those two in the middle of the defense, that's going to be an upgrade over last year with Bush and Joe Schobert. It would appear anyway on paper. Jack had according to the experts, he had a down year last year, but Jacksonville so crazy. It's hard to say. Maybe a change of scenery will be the best thing for him. And he seems like a good guy, a team leader, kind of a guy, and he's 26, and you get him for 2 years, $16 million. That's not bad. So he should add a lot to that defense in 2022. And of course, Levi Wallace, he's a solid corner. He's your prototypical number 2 corner. I was reading Jeffrey Benedict's article on Friday about him, really good film room. And according to him, he has a lot of the characteristics of a Joe Hayden, but he's like a poor man's Joe Hayden. But that's fine. They signed a killer Witherspoon on Thursday, so already have Cam Sutton in the fold. So their corners are solid. I would say they're not. There really isn't. You would say at this point anyway, unless Witherspoon develops into that, or even Wallace, but it doesn't seem like he's an undrafted free agent. I guess if he was going to do that, he probably would have developed into that by this point. But they don't have like a lockdown corner, but they have 3 good young corners. I don't see them going out and getting a veteran like a Stephon Gilmore. I mean, if they're going to do that, they might as well just bring back Joe Hayden. But, this is where, a guy like Justin Lane, your 3rd round pick in 2019, he was believed to be a value pick at that, at that point. He was supposedly drafted lower than he should have been, but, the way his career's gone so far, he was overdrafted, so that, Justin Lane theoretically should have been ready to start by no later than 2020 or 2021. And I mean, he barely gets on the field. He's basically a special teams guy. So that's where, if you could develop a guy, and I don't put it all on the team. When it comes to a player developing, I put it 70% on the player, 30% on coaching. And I'd say when it comes to Justin Lane, it's mostly all on him that he has not been able to develop. But if you can, if he was a bona fide starting corner right now, then that would solve a lot of their issues in the secondary. So the question is, what do they do is with the rest of their secondary as far as their safety? Do they bring back Terrell Edmonds? To me, that's who I would bring back. I mean, he's young, he's 25, he's solid, he works well with Minka Fitzpatrick, but it's a 2-way street. And what does he want to re-sign here? Does he want to break the bank? Does he want 14, 15 million a year? Because he's probably not going to get it. So that's it's a question of what he's willing, what his demands are. And there's a obviously a very loud ground, swell for Tyrann Mathieu, the strong safety formerly of the Chiefs and Texans. That's the latest on the wish list for fans. And, obviously he's a tremendous player, but he's also going to be 30 years old in May. And that kind of goes against what the Steelers have been doing so far this week. They've been bringing a lot of guys in on second contracts. And, it was already a really young team to begin with. And these guys that they brought in, I mean, it adds to that. So to me, I would rather have Edmonds because I think he's a solid player. And like Dave Schofield always says, if he wasn't a first round pick, more people would love what he's doing in the Steeler uniform. But since he's a first round pick, people don't like him. But it's really not his fault that he was overdrafted. It's the Steelers' fault. It's Mike Tomlin's fault. It's Kevin Colbert's fault for drafting somebody they probably could have gotten in the second round. But still, I mean, for the Steelers defense, I think he fits in pretty well. So hopefully they can work something out with him if they bring in Matthew or Mathau. I don't even know how you say his last name, but I'd be okay with that. I mean, obviously he's a dynamic player. It would be fun, but I think there's a difference between collecting stars and building a roster. And I think Edmonds would fit in well with this defense, and especially if Hayward and I'm not Hayward, if Tuitt and Alualu come back and are productive again. I think, that's this pass rush. If it's the kind of pass rush that we've seen since late 2016, then that would go a long way in making that secondary even better. It wouldn't be a liability, which it potentially could be, I guess, if you have essentially three number two corners back there. So we'll see. I mean, I think it's also important to temper your enthusiasm just a little bit because again, none of these guys are Pro Bowl players. They're young players heading into even Trubisky essentially should be heading into a second contract, but he had to move on from the Bears for a season. Here's a $5 super chat and that's all I pretty much have to say about that. And I'll take some questions, and I'll start with a $5 super chat from I'm frozen a little bit here. From Liberty Library Com, and they say bring back Juju, bring back AB to help the young receiving core. I don't think AB's in a place where he's going to help the young receiving core. AB's still in that mindset where he wants the ball thrown to him 130 times a year. So I don't think he would be a help to the receiving core. You don't want AB as your mentor at this point. He really hasn't changed all that much since he left here 3 years ago. So I kind of think that'd be a bad idea. But, Jarvis Landry would be a great guy to fill that role. Julio Jones, a consummate professional. He'd be a great guy to fill that role if you can get him at a decent price. He's 33 years old. He's older, but he'd be a great guy to fill that role and maybe to show these youngsters how to be a professional. But AB, that would not be a great idea. All right, let's see what we have here. Alan Fant says they could use a nose guard and Justin Jones from Connecticut, someone who can control the center of the line from guard to guard and keep pressure on the QB. Well, Lou is does a great job of that, but he's getting up there. So we'll see what they do with the draft. That's definitely a name I'm going to keep my eye on, though. Christopher 11 says, I think the big question is Tuitt. Yeah, that's that. I mean, he's, the word is now that he's coming back, but you never know until you know. I mean, we still have the rest of the offseason to go. You got training camp to get through if you're him. So it'll be interesting to see where his mindset is. And I think I missed a super chat. from Ryan O'Toole. And he asked, he donates $5. Thank you, Ryan. And since I missed it, I'll just read it. And he says, thoughts on Juju and Washington only getting 1-year contracts. Well, I think it's, when it comes to Juju anyway, it's a prove it deal, because I think that might be more one-sided on his end as far as a 1-year deal. Excuse me, a 1-year deal, because really he hasn't put anything on he hasn't put up 20 he hasn't put up those like real productive numbers since 2018. So he's had 3 years in a row where he's kind of taking a step back as a receiver. So I think he still wants to put a season on tape, put a season on his resume, that he can show teams that, look, I'm a big play receiver in this league. I'm still young, and I want to be paid accordingly. As far as James Washington, that's definitely a prove it deal, because I mean, really, he hasn't done anything in the NFL since his only real productive year was 2019. Ironically enough, when Roethlisberger was injured, he led the league he led the team in receiving yards with 735, and he showed a lot of big play potential that year, but he really hasn't done anything since. Now you could say that's on the team for not giving him more playing time and kind of bringing in guys like Claypool and Johnson, and of course Juju coming back, and you have McLeod in there, and he's not getting the targets he wants. But hey, look, what's the saying? The cream rises to the top. And Washington, if he was really, I mean, I think he is talented, but for whatever reason, he just can never do anything to get these coaches to have the confidence in him to be a more to get more targets. So I think it's just another prove it deal for Washington. There, I'm definitely not shocked that Washington only got a 1-year deal, because really, what team's going to pay him a decent amount of money on a multi-year deal at this point? And Nate Van Slyke says, getting the Honey Badger would be huge. I'm still not sure if I would pick Willis now, but if he drops to us, and excuse me, too much talking. If he drops to us and we can get him, that'd be awesome. I don't think he's going to be there, honestly. I don't think Willis or Pickett are going to be there. But to me, that's okay. Because like I said on the Hangover on Monday, you have Trubisky. Maybe drafting a quarterback, unless, I mean, if one of those two guys falls to you, it'd be hard to pass on them, in my opinion. But I don't think they're going to be there. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. And if that's the case, I think, that would be what's best for Trubisky. Because you know how it is when you bring in a first-round quarterback, the clock is ticking at that point for them to be the starter. So I think, if Trubisky doesn't have to worry about looking over his shoulder at all in 2022, provided he, blows the other two guys away in training camp, then that could go a long way in his development and perhaps becoming that guy I mentioned earlier that could be their franchise guy for the next 5 or 6 years. But as far as the Honey Badger, like I said, there's a difference between collecting stars and building a roster, and I think it's easy to get swept up in that thought process, especially this week when you see what the Steelers have done. But let's be clear, Steelers, they've been a bit splashy, but they've also been pretty practical with these moves. Miles Jack is not a Pro Bowler. James Daniels is not a Pro Bowler. Levi Wallace is not a Pro Bowler. Mason Cole is not a Pro Bowler. Of course, Trubisky, he might have made it once in Chicago. I don't know. I know they went to the playoffs a couple of times with him, but he's certainly not a top level quarterback at this point. But these are all sound moves. If you're bringing in Tyrann Mathieu, what is his thought process? Does he want to be the superstar at safety? Because that's Minka's job right now. How well are they going to work together? Troy Polamalu, he worked well with Chris Hope. Chris Hope was kind of like his Robin. Same with Ryan Clark. Ryan Clark was a solid safety. He was really good, and he made a lot of good plays for them. But, he had to play the game a certain way so Troy could be that first ballot Hall of Famer. What is the Honey Badger? What is his motivation right now? And how much money? First of all, what is his motivation as a player? Does he want to be the man, or does he want to take a step? Does he want to be the Robin to Minka's Batman? Because make no mistake, that's what he would be here. And what does he want financially? I mean, I mentioned what Edmonds, what his contract demands. What does the Honey Badger want? As far as if he wants 15, 16 million a year, well, that's basically what you're gonna have to pay Minka Fitzpatrick on a multi-year deal. They want to pay two guys that kind of money. So, I think it's easy to get swept up in that frenzy. They got to get all these big names in here, but really they have to find the best 53 players that work well together. So, like I said, I think Edmonds would be a fantastic guy to re-sign, provided he doesn't want 15 million a year, which I don't. If he wants that, he's delusional. But if he wants 10 million a year, that's not bad for a starting strong safety in today's NFL. He's a solid guy. He's a solid player, and he does things that people might not realize this, or maybe they forget it easily. But he's the guy that covers the tight ends for them now. I mean, he's been doing that for a few years. Would the Honey Badger be willing to do that? Does he have the athleticism at this point to do that? There's a lot of grunt work that being the Robin to the other guy's Batman. There's a lot of grunt work that goes along that's involved with that. Would a superstar like Matthew be willing to do that? So there's a lot of things to consider when you're talking about, should they sign this guy, or should they sign that guy, or should they bring in this guy, or should bringing in AB to be the mentor when he's not a mentor type, or even Julio Jones at this point. Where is his mindset? Does he want to be a mentor? Does he still think he could be a superstar even at the age of 33? So there's a lot to consider when you're talking about who you bring in. It's not just about the name. It's about what they're willing. It's like what Mike Tomlin says often. It's not what you're capable of. It's what you're willing to do. So these guys have to come in and play a certain role. And we saw it last year with Melvin Ingram. He wasn't willing to play the role that the Steelers wanted him to play, and they ultimately had to trade him away. So on that note, I've really been talking tonight, but I think I'm getting long in the tooth as far as the show is concerned, and I want Brian to yell at me. So I'm going to call it a night. It was a fun show. It was an exciting week. And the great thing about Steelers free agency is it's not over after the first wave. We saw it last year, even though, it resulted in Melvin Ingram, and ultimately that didn't work out. But they brought him in July. They brought in Trey Turner in June. They went out and they got Witherspoon and Schobert, even though they weren't free agents, they were trades. But the Steelers offseason is never over. So who knows what we're going to have to talk about next week or on Monday on The Hangover with Brian and Shannon. So please stay tuned. And until then, have a great weekend. And as always, go Steelers. Take care, everybody.